Hello, everyone. My name's Matt. I'm a senior engineer at FactSet. We're a financial data services company, and we want to give you a little presentation today on what we do and how we've been utilizing adaptive cards for the last, maybe year and a half now. So we've been using it pretty extensively, and it's worked really well. So we want to dive into some of that. So first, I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of our company. Then I'm going to dive into a little overview of Signals, which is the project that we work on specifically. We want to talk about why adaptive cards is perfect for our use case and why we chose to sort of go that route. And then we want to provide some examples of some cool stuff that we've built out using that. So without further ado, I plugged in a little video here. So again, testing the tech, but it's over dramatic and it's going to get us all hyped up about what FactSet is. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
In today's fast-paced world, taking your ideas from concept to execution quickly is critical to developing innovative approaches and tackling complex problems. FactSet offers the ability to seamlessly discover, evaluate, and implement the data you need within your existing workflow. Expand your catalog of data with the open FactSet Marketplace, the destination for best-in-class data and solutions from FactSet and third-party providers. Leverage FactSet's deep expertise in data integrity and connectivity to unlock the true power of data. We've pre-linked data provided by carefully selected sources with our proprietary data, such as ownership, supply chain, and fundamentals. FactSet offers all the content and tools you need in one location. Access, analyze, and visualize financial data in a cloud-hosted environment, or leverage your existing infrastructure to interact with the data locally. Enjoy seamless research and production access to your data while reducing hardware costs and maintenance. Easily upload your content into a secure instance of your database, or download content as if the server is on your own network. Whether you're interested in FactSet's proprietary content or third-party alternative data, our technology and solutions enable you to easily discover, evaluate, and implement the data and tools you need to power your investment workflow.
We're a financial services company, and we've been around for a while, and we're looking to integrate all of these data points and service all sorts of user classes across the industry. And so one of the problems that we've seen for a little while now is the fact that we just have so much information that our clients historically have had to pore over tables and charts and stuff. So what we want to do is we create this Signals product, which is supposed to be actionable insights that sort of find our clients as opposed to them having to dig through it. So some examples here, essentially, we want to overcome this information overload and focus on meaningful research. So it's sort of a method of aggregating different content sets into a normalized way and meeting our clients where they are to provide a brief hint at sort of what might be interesting to them and then next steps for how to investigate it. So I think it's probably easiest to look at some examples. So these are some examples of signals that we've collected from a series of different content sets that we have. We have our own in-house cognitive. So one of the cool ones here is S&P 500 predictions. So we're actually predicting when a company is going to be added to the S&P. We work with a lot of third-party data providers, such as news, but also credit rating companies, ESG companies, to collect data there and transform those into a normalized signal. And then also just rules-based, some conditions are met for a company, a data point changes, and all of a sudden, something like an M&A sale was announced, right? That's an event, and we can just trigger a signal like that. So we're collecting all of these content sets and trying to provide meaningful information for our clients from them. This is an example of one that could be useful to someone. So this is the S&P 500 predictions. So one of our clients might come in to start doing research on a company, right? Say this MPWR company, and the first thing they see at the top is that, hey, we're predicting that this is going to go into the S&P 500. We can see then that it follows up with a street account when it actually happens. So a breaking news banner that it was added, 7 days later. So we're able to give folks a jump on some of the things that might be happening under the scenes that they would have to, collect data from across multiple applications to really figure out for themselves. So why adaptive cards to present this data? Well, for one, the whole idea behind signals are that they're both brief and they're atomic. So our entire strategy here is to provide data that you can skim kind of and really glean a lot from a little. So by nature, they're really small payloads with only a few data points, and we can kind of follow this guidance of like, if it's too big to be an adaptive card, it's probably too big to be a signal, because all of a sudden it just becomes, a new report. And so we've worked to follow this kind of idea and build out all of the UI representations of our signals as adaptive cards. So we have one of our flagship products is the FactSet WorkStation, a series of web applications. And we've integrated into there with sort of a FactSet styled adaptive card. So this is some adaptive card data that's rendering there in the red box. We're able to integrate through Power Automate into Microsoft Teams and Outlook. So that's an example sort of on the right there of a message that's been pushed as an adaptive card. Adaptive card payloads are by nature very small. So that works with our product Fact Search, which is provides type ahead cards as someone's typing, and we can quickly flash that information to them and catch their attention at a reasonable speed. And again, off platform, this is all provided through an API first. So if we sell our API to a client and they want to extend our adaptive cards or just have that UI representation right off the bat, we can provide that to them. And CRM as well, so integrating into things like Salesforce and whatnot. So this is sort of the reason we went down this path and identified adaptive cards as a really sort of good idea and way to implement all of this. So continuing on, here's sort of an example of the power of using this as an adaptive card. So because we have all of our UI as in this adaptive card format, we're able to set up Microsoft flows for our clients. So for example, we can build this out so that when a user gets a certain type of email from anywhere really, but theoretically in this example, it's a FactSet alert, we can check if there's any signals for the companies that came through in that alert. And if they are, it'll post a message to the Teams channel with all of the UI present there. So that's super, super powerful. And it's a way to just sort of, again, meet the clients where they are and surface that information without them having to check every single portfolio company that they're watching for the day, every single day. So, we've loved adaptive cards for the Microsoft integration. A lot of our clients use Microsoft products, so that alone, being able to push into Outlook, Microsoft Teams, all of these different products has been huge for us. But sort of a problem that we've had is that a lot of companies have their own style signatures, the CSS that's really driving the cohesiveness of a product. So we've tried a couple of approaches to apply this, and I think it's alluded to in the docs, extensibility that adaptive cards provides, just beyond the native renderer. So one example of this, we actually were able to implement what we have is sort of what we call the Fusion design system. It's the way to hook up, responsiveness throughout our applications, all of our styles, different fonts and whatnot that sort of fact-setify, for lack of a better word, the UI here. So using this idea of extensibility and overwriting the internal render functions that Microsoft provides us, we were able to do something as simple as, first of all, override some of the global styles, and then just override a couple of elements, namely the column set and columns, to be transformed into what we call flex layouts and flex cells. So what you get is that these two are sort of, they get rendered using that same renderer, except instead of columns, it'll render all of that data inside of a flex cell, and you can see it actually breaks on the iPhone X and becomes rows. So, to do that, it really wasn't a lot of code. And I think that that's just sort of a powerful example of how, without waiting for responsiveness from Microsoft, which has a whole lot of other problems, making it work in Teams and Outlook and all of these other integration points, you can kind of do it yourself with not a lot of lift.
Awesome. That is super cool to see. I love that you guys took advantage of that. We've been chipping away at responsiveness internally. Haven't really been able to share much yet because again, we have to solve it in every platform, which has its own quirks. But that's really cool to see. I've always wanted to sort of see that happening where columns can just grow into a flex style. As a quick question on your design system and the Fusion UI renderer, is that cross-platform, or are you on a handful of platforms natively, or is it like JavaScript based, or what is your rendering tech?
Yeah, it is. It is JavaScript based. It will render. I mean, we're rendering all of our web apps as JavaScript, I believe. I don't work on the mobile team or anything like that, so I'd have to double check. But the idea is that these are sort of Vue components under the hood that do render in. It's supposed to be across the board, any screen width properly. Yeah. So it is web based though.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so that was one thing, and that's sort of the newer. I think when we first tried to, like I said, FactSetify what we had, this sort of the functions to hook into that we needed weren't there and exposed. So on our first pass, what we ended up doing was sort of extending the schema to provide FactSet flavoring within FactSet context. So in this case, instead of overriding the renderer that Microsoft provided, my teammate Andrew wrote a renderer that will take an adaptive card schema and render it as is, except when it looks for an FDS attribute, in which case we were able to sort of define our own elements. So in FactSet, we have this concept of an infographic, which is a styled text block. And what you would end up doing is writing how that can compile down to adaptive cards, which would just be sort of 2 column sets with a text block, so that when the same schema and data points are plugged into the either renderer, the FactSet one inside our products renders with FactSet styles and FactSet components, but the adaptive cards one keeps that parity. So you can see here, we actually implemented a table. So this is a FactSet table, and we did our best for Microsoft. It's a little tough, but we know that's coming along from you guys. But yeah, so this was another sort of our first pass at it. And then I'm actually going to hand it off to Andrew, who wrote a really cool sort of WYSIWYG designer to talk about sort of how that works and a little bit more under the hood.
Yeah, so as Matt said, my name's Andrew. I'm another engineer here at FactSet, and I did a lot of work on our adaptive cards renderer and designer. And yeah, as Matt was saying, we have like a lot of these different views that we want to show for different signals. I think we're somewhere around 50 now. We want to have even more than that. So we wanted to have a solution where we can build out these cards to display in multiple environments, but we didn't want to have to, manage multiple different cards for different environments. So what we have here is just an extension of the adaptive cards that kind of allows us to keep our style that we have inside of our internal application.
This is an example of, we initially built it out and we wanted, the adaptive card for the Microsoft products and that integration point, while also keeping, Vue and being able to keep it looking proper inside of our own products. And so what we did was we built this designer so that we're not building out a Vue component every single time. And this actually builds up that schema for both cases, right? So it adds on those FDS properties that signify to our renderer, hey, this is an infographic and therefore it should be styled this way. And the native Microsoft renderer just ignores it and renders as, a column.
Yeah, so I was just kind of showing you like how you can pull like any of those different components down and see just an example on the side of how it would be rendered. And this is just an excerpt of what will get written to that adaptive cards JSON file. So this is that second element that you were seeing in that last slide, that infographic group, which is really just 2 different text blocks. And you can see in the highlighted parts on the left side there that those are our extensions to the adaptive card schema, where we kind of just add some hints to the renderer saying this text block here we actually want this to be one of our existing components that we have already written in Vue. And just the way that the adaptive card schema is laid out made it really easy to just be able to map this directly to any kind of component library you might be using in JavaScript. So we're using Vue, and it's pretty easy for us to have this get mapped to just 2 Vue components for the different infographic text blocks. And then you can see on the right-hand side how this adaptive card JSON ends up getting rendered. So on the top side, you just have the regular text blocks with the bolder weight and the small spacing. Whereas on the bottom, you're seeing our components that are rendered in Vue with those overrides that we have in that FDS section. So this has really kind of helped us maintain a single template for each signal, while also being able to have a native looking appearance in both our application and any integrations we have, like Microsoft Teams or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also something worth noting is that this approach, you had said the schema makes it really easy to extend. We sort of jumped on this bandwagon, like I said, almost a couple years ago. And I think the renderer was still in beta. We didn't really know a whole lot about it. And I think it's picked up a lot of steam since. But we felt, with this approach, we were comfortable enough that even if Microsoft decided to chuck adaptive cards as a product, that the schema was good enough that we could continue to support it internally. And, we had this power to do this. We obviously lose the Microsoft integration point, but it was still a really good approach for us just for internal rendering. But yeah, so those are sort of the 2 approaches that we've taken at FactSet to utilize adaptive cards and also extend it to get a lot of the features that aren't yet native, but I think that make it easier to support in our own environments. And I think it's a process, and maybe Matt and JP can speak a little bit more to it, but it seems like kind of the pattern that you're going for in terms of rendering inside of your own products, just from the sort of hints in the extensibility docs. But, just to mention, we've had a lot of good success there.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. The extensibility stuff was made for what you're doing, as an escape hatch, so people weren't always locked in. You guys came up with a table. It took us a little bit to get a table in there, and that's why we really wanted that. Not a lot of people are rendering cards. A lot of people are delivering cards into Teams and Outlook. Not everyone's, rendering them in their own product, but it has proven to be a useful API for pretty much everyone who does decide to go the rendering route.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much our presentation. I put up a slide for questions or discussion or anything if anyone wants. I'm not sure what we're looking like time-wise on the presentation, if you guys want to take it back, but figured if you want, we could open the floor.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions related to FactSet, please feel encouraged to type them either in the chat or unmute and ask them. We're looking good on time, so no worries there.
I'll start and then raise my hand normally, the polite thing to do, and then call on myself. I'm curious if is all this stuff in production at this point?
Yes. So I know that all of the stuff that we're rendering inside of our reports and that's going out to most of our clients today. So that would be our own custom renderer. Internally, I know that we are using like adaptive cards in Teams. I'm not 100% sure if we have clients hitting that yet, but it's well in the pipeline and we have all the schemas. I could let maybe Shardul or Kyle comment on that. I believe we're on the call. But yeah, this is in front of clients. We've made sales and it's going really well.
Awesome.
Yeah, Matt, just to chime in, this is Kyle. We have a FactSet app in Teams that delivers adaptive cards through an API. It's not the signals content, but it is some other content. So.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I thought. Didn't want to say for sure, but yeah. Thanks.
I'll use the same approach that Matt just did and go ahead and ask my own question here. I'm curious, how long did it take to implement that custom designer that FactSet uses?
I'll let Andrew talk about that. That was his baby.
Yeah, so the internal designer, so there already is like that existing designer that just regular adaptive card supports. And we built our own designer for for our own renderer to kind of just have like a more focused view of like just building out these cards that we have specifically for signals. It's like we had those couple of custom elements like that infographic group in the table. So it wasn't really too difficult to put all that together because, like I said, the format for adaptive cards maps pretty well to any kind of component system. So yeah, so that was like a pretty straightforward implementation that really just kind of helped simplify things in a way that let people that aren't necessarily like engineering focused to be able to use the components that we know that we want to use for our cards and just have like a really easy way of putting that together.
Yeah, we're engineers. We want to do literally nothing. So that's always the goal. Yeah, and it seemed like, I think you utilized third-party libraries for the drag and drop and all of that. And then, if you think about the schema, there's not a whole lot additional to it. All we had this sort of track was where those were positioned under the different, so like if an infographic is on the same level or underneath a column, that sort of makes sense. But sort of just hooking up the UI, and a lot of that stuff was written with third-party libraries. But I won't speak to the ease of it because I didn't write it. It seems like Andrew whipped it up pretty fast, a couple weeks or so.
I think this is the coolest thing about that, and it's just something I've learned and gotten really excited about adaptive cards over the years, is I had never, our CEO now, Satya, says citizen developer basically at every conference, which is really referring to power users and users of like the Power Platform. It hadn't even crossed my mind as an audience. And now I'd say a significant chunk of the folks on this call fall into that camp. They're power users, information workers out there who are using these technologies to automate things that previously we had to hire out, to ISVs to do, or all sorts of stuff. And adaptive cards has come along as this thing to enable them to build like these lightweight UIs where you don't have to have a lot of skill in that. And I think it's really cool just taking that concept and, whether you're using adaptive card designer is sort of less important than just making these things accessible to a broader range of users and use cases. So it's cool to see that.
Yeah, I think Shortle just posted, for what it's worth, the Signal product was shown 40,000 times in August. So yeah, it's definitely in front of some eyes.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. It'd be interesting to see how the new table element that we have in 1.5 compares to the table that your team has implemented.
I can't wait to start working on that because I think we've run into some issues with that, like because we have to cut the text off so it doesn't wrap because that would throw off the whole alignment. So yeah. That's sort of what you end up seeing a lot of times with the ad hoc little table that we built in Microsoft using columns. So we're definitely excited to clean that up.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Matt, for showing us everything about FactSet. It's definitely an exciting product, and the demo was great. My favorite part was the designer, for sure.